not to make something look pretty, it's to make something work that should look pretty, at least to the market looking at it. And I think that's one of the hardest things that that I think that's the magic moment between a good designer and a great one.
Welcome to the Passion Behind the Art Show. It's all about diving in with individuals to learn the story behind their passion. It's your host, Daryl Pinna. So before we jump into this week's episode, I want to let you know that we have a new shirt out for the podcast. New shirt out, so go to DPCREATES.com and order your shirt. And it will be gone June 17th. So it's a limited edition shirt, and I think pretty much all the gear for the podcast, minus the stickers, will be limited edition. So go to dpcreates.com and get your shirt. That's D as in dog, P as in Peter, creates.com. Without further ado, let's jump into this week's episode. Well, I'm excited to have Joseph Szala, principal and creative director at Vigor, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Joseph, welcome, man.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. There's a lot of things going on at Vigor that I'm intrigued and a little bit very excited, especially when it comes to food.
Absolutely. A lot of things is an understatement.
All right, so let's kind of go back to the beginning a little. How did this journey in design start for you?
Yeah, good question. So my journey, I think, was a lot like a lot of other creatives that you hear out there, and I wish it was something more magical and something more transcendent, maybe. But I played music. I played the bass. Played in a band for a while, and honestly, I ended up being the guy that just designed the flyers and everything for our shows. And then after I got out of high school, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and someone told me, you could do that and like make money. And I was like, what? What? This is great. The journey had some bumps in the road up until then, but, it was either between music and design / creative and looking at the numbers. And I think music was going to get it for me,
Oh, okay. Cool. Now I'm even more intrigued because you started talking about music. So,
yeah.
Talk a little bit about that part of your journey, like the whole playing for a band and like the experience.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people who haven't played in bands maybe glamorize that world a bit more than it should be. The best way I can put it is I played with two other guys. At some point it became a third, and we played pretty heavy music, actually, rock. It's like dating a bunch of other dudes, like just flat out. Like, it's I wish there was another metaphor, but I mean, seriously, like, for instance, the one time I went to friends of mine who had a band, and I just went to their practice and I jammed out a little bit, and when I told them, like, the band just looked at me as if I had cheated on them. They're like, well, why did you do that? I'm like, I don't know, man, because they're my friends, and so I just went to hang out, and then, one thing led to another. I was playing bass. I don't know. But it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of ancillary effects from playing music, especially playing music when you get far enough to play shows outside of maybe, the small little things. And so we were never big enough to really tour or anything. We put out our own albums. We didn't have a record label or anything like that. But we did tour around, I'm from the Northeast, so we toured around, Philly, New York, D.C., Baltimore, and then central Pennsylvania, so that area. And, I don't have very much fear of speaking in front of people. I also really don't have a fear of messing up, because what I learned is most people don't know you're messing up when you're messing up. Only you do. So there was a lot of valuable stuff. And I still have a big heart for music.
And see, the crazy part is what you just said. That's like a big lesson in music when you're doing any kind of performance. It's like nobody knows you're messing up.
Exactly.
Only you.
In fact, we used to sing other song lyrics in the middle of our song just to see, like, the lead singer and I, just to get the other one to crack up. like just to see if we can get in the crack on stage. So I remember one time in particular we were in Brooklyn playing, and in a breakdown of a song, my singer goes up and he starts singing a song by this band Seven Dust ATL. And I'm like playing and kind of jamming, feeling the groove, and all of a sudden it catches my ear, and I looked over and I'm like, what?
Like, that's not what we're supposed to be singing.
Yeah, exactly. And I had to turn my back because I couldn't stop laughing. But that there's camaraderie there, and I think you also learn, at least in a band that I played in, you learn how to work together to create something better than what you would have done by yourself.
Awesome, man.
And you kind of respect that value.
So we're in the Northeast. Where are you coming from?
I come from a place called York, Pennsylvania. It's the home of Peppermint Patty's, Harley Davidson, and the band Live, and that's really about it.
Okay,
really
cool. The reason I asked because I grew up in New York, so.
All right, what part?
Well, it started in Brooklyn and it ended in the Bronx.
I mean, that could be the name of your autobiography, man.
That is funny. Oh man, this is awesome. So, all right, before we get into some other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're now running your own studio,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's fast forward a little. Like, what is the first hour of your day like?
So the first hour of my day is usually alone. I've somehow trained myself to get up pretty early, so I'm usually in there about an hour to 30 minutes before everyone else. At that point, I'm checking my emails, I'm catching up, I'm trying to, soak up anything that I missed maybe the day before,
Nice.
get my head right, and then prepare for everyone else to kind of come in, and then around that time we regroup. I try to do like a morning kickoff, morning huddle, make sure that one, everybody has work, and then two, make sure that nobody has too much work, and then plan out our collective days, figure out like what's today going to look like, and is there anything hot and crucial that has to get done? Does that person need help? Do I need to step in? And that's usually about the first hour.
And you're running a studio for like a team of how much?
We have about 5 people.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a nice number.
Yeah, it's
like
a
that.
healthy one.
All right, cool. So now we're going back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you started graphic design. You started designing stuff. Did you go to school? Did you just start designing on your own? Like, how did the transition happen before even we get to the studio?
Yeah, so if we go the whole way back to the beginning of the first time that I made something, it was GeoCities. I don't know if you can remember what GeoCities is, but that was that was like 1995.
You're going back.
But I started like coding. I'm like, I was hanging with this other band, and the lead singer was making this thing called a web page, and I was like, well, what's this? And he's like, oh, it's this thing called the internet,
Right.
But he's, it's like a 1-page thing. We're putting the flashy things on there and like changing the backgrounds. And I really started getting into it then. I kind of taught myself, and I started picking up like Corel Draw, then Photoshop. And so I self-taught a lot. But honestly, it wasn't up until I was maybe 22 until I found out that I realized that graphic design was a thing. And it was something that I could do. And then at that point, I went to school. And I went to a school, so anybody that knows me will probably start laughing because they know what I'm about to say. It doesn't exist anymore, and so it kind of sucks because, like, it used to be... So I'll get, like, I guess I'll get a little introspective maybe, but it's a bummer because this school was in York, and it was started by a husband and wife. They were both fine artists, and they built this school into something that was like hard. It was hard to get in. You know what I mean? So like if you showed up without a book, you just got turned right back around. They were like, "Sorry, friend, go draw some stuff, then come back, and then we'll take a look at you. And then if it's good enough, we'll think about accepting you." And it wasn't because they were mean. They just held a standard of who was allowed to be in. It didn't matter if you had money. You could have been the richest kid. I mean, let's be real. Like if you had a lot of money, they probably would have let you in. But like it wasn't about the money, and it was about the quality of product and the quality of student, and they kind of ranked you into a couple different categories. It was like you had these, and it actually still rings true. I'm sure you probably see this. You can start pegging people, but like I think in the creative world, like you have these people that are just naturals, like they see things that the way that like not other people see, and they just don't know necessarily how to, like what to do with that. And so you can take people like that and you can make something truly amazing. You know what I mean? And I mean like just golden child, Then you have people that are willing to learn and kind of creative. Yeah, and they will grind and they will put in the work, and because of their grind, because of their hustle, because they won't stop, they can get to a really high level. And then underneath that, you just have some people, and then you have people next to those too. And maybe I'm going way down a rabbit hole here, but I think there's nothing more tragic than two kinds of people. One, the natural talent who doesn't work, I think is the saddest thing. It's one of the most saddest things in the world, and it's it actually angers me because I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you have natural talent that's so good, but my God, if you just like pushed, right? Like, you could blow up the world, like, and then the other side of that is the person who, man, I don't care what your parents tell you, you can't be anything you want to be. Like, you just, if you don't have it, you don't have it. And, for people like that, it doesn't help to hear that, oh, that's really good, man, keep on trying. It's doing a disservice because there's something else in that person that's amazing that you're preventing from actually like coming out because you're lauding work that doesn't deserve it. That doesn't mean you gotta be mean about it, but I saw both kinds of people in school and after the fact, where it was just
nice.
And it's kind of sad, but there's so many good gems, man. I think if people listen and they train and they work hard, you can just go far no matter what.
I love it, man. Like, especially with that school part, like I could really attest to that. I went to school that I ran into the same situation.
Oh yeah. Oh no, what school? What was the name of your school?
Well, this was when I was studying architecture.
Okay.
And it was a very technical based school, great school, learned a lot. It's called it was in Brooklyn, and probably like 2 years ago they just said they were closing the doors. It was started by this Italian guy, and
that's a bummer. It's heartbreaking. Well, I mean, at least they saw it through, and they just came to, I guess, an end. My school got eaten up by the monster AI, Art Institute, and Art Institute said, "Give me your money and your money and your money," and then they were like, "All right, we don't need any more money. We're just gonna close this thing because you're in Central PA and nobody cares." It's kind of how it went down. Yeah.
Yikes.
So that was a heartbreaker. It was tragic.
All right, so what caused you to think about, okay, I'm going to start Vigor, and where did that name come from?
Right, so the start of it is because when you're 23, you know everything. So I knew everything, and so I was like, oh, because I know everything, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. It was more about formalizing freelance. Honestly, I was doing this already. I wanted to get more work. I wanted to do more of it, and so I always believe in the grind. My dad was a really, really hard worker. A lot, like just worked all the time, and his dad, same thing. I mean, I can go down stories and paths that would make this podcast a week long, but I got that, like I got this ethic that 9 to 5 isn't a thing. It's go and it's grind and it's get it done, and as a result, like when I started looking at like, okay, what really drives me, there was a lot of metaphors, visual metaphors out there, and the word vigor just kind of kept on popping up. It means strength, it means power, it means conviction, drive, all those things, all baked into one pretty little word that everyone says wrong all the time. They say Vigor or all these other wacky things, man. Yeah.
So, all right, so that's funny. So, what was like the first biggest project you say, okay, this is something is happening here?
Great question. So I was, and this will get a laugh too. So I was doing a lot of work for bands, and anybody that does work for music or for bands knows that they inherently don't have money at all. So you'll get like a $300 project here, maybe a 500 there, and then they're gonna like chintz out on paying you anyway, and it's always really tough, you know. But so I was doing a lot of work like that, and then I had done work for a band and the guy became a friend of mine as a result, and he introduced me to his friend who had a friend who worked at a salon in New York on Madison Avenue, you know, the salon area, and met with them, and they hired me to do their brand and their website, and
Nice.
it was $12,000. I thought I was like made, dude. I was like, oh, well, that's great. I'll
Big
just,
time.
Yeah, I'm big time now. You know, like I guess I'll just do this. In all honesty, there was a flood of like, wow, I've done something pretty big here, and it prompted me to leave the freelance. I was freelancing at a small studio in York, so I left there to really go full bore with Vigor.
And what year was that?
That was 2004. Yeah, 2004.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So, all right. So, you're running Vigor.
Mm-hmm.
When did the focus of food come into play? When did that? Because, like, for me, like, I grew up in a food family.
Yeah.
My brother's a chef. My mom is a caterer.
Nice.
And like I've always been around cooking. I just happen to love design more.
Right.
So, like, what caused you to focus on food?
So I remember we were at a wedding, and I was sitting at a table, and one of the people at the table was also a creative / designer, and he talked about how he's starting this restaurant with a friend of his, and then we got to talking more, and I'm like, oh my God, I know you, dude. We've played shows together, you know. So we had like this thing, like that he played in a band, and I played in a band. We had played together. I just didn't place it right away, and he got very charismatic. I got very charismatic. We were like, oh, this is like so many high fives, all the high fives that night, like blistered hands from high fives, right? And I told him, I was like, well, let's meet up, you know, talk to Chef. At the very least, we'll have some beers and some laughs. That won't be a bad thing. And you bring what you've done so far, and let's just talk about it. He did. I saw the design work, and I was like, please don't do this. This is very ugly.
Oh.
This is very terrible. I was like, I you know, of course I had a few beers in me, so I had, you know, no qualms of telling him his work is terrible. I was like, look, just let me do this. Give me a little bit of scratch. Give me a little bit of money. And give me an open tab at the restaurant up into a certain amount of money. Like, no need to be ridiculous. Right. And he agreed, and that was the first restaurant we did. It was 2006. It opened in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and from there, we got a number of phone calls afterwards from other restaurants that really liked like the work that we were doing, and you know, it kind of springed out from there. We still didn't focus. We didn't focus until I left and moved to Atlanta. And that's when we really like just doubled down on restaurants. Yeah.
So when, if you don't mind me asking, like, why come to Atlanta?
Yeah. So for those that remember 2008 and 9, when the economy hit that brick wall and went straight down, that was. I have no problem being open and honest because I think there's lessons in everything. At that point, we had about an 8 to 10 person staff. We were doing a lot of work in manufacturing and pharma, a bunch of restaurant work, a gym, a hair salon. Like we had just everything. It was general practitioner is what I would call it, of branding and design, and web as well. And one by one, I had to let go of people, and the unfortunate skill is it made me very good at having that terrible conversation, you know, which I don't want to ever have, but it actually made you really good at like having bad conversations. Like there's always sometimes a bad thing you have to say, and I feel like so many people like dance around it, and that tends to kind of give you the brass tacks and I think the the long view of how to handle those things. So I did that, and at the same time, so it went back to just me sitting in an apartment with a computer, just trying to make it work. And I went to Puerto Rico. It was my great grandma's 90th birthday, and 36 of us went to Puerto Rico, 4 generations. To
Nice.
I would say lightly surprise, a very light surprise, like not jumping out of things. It was a trickling surprise, and surprised she was, and it was wonderful. A lot of warmth, a lot of goodness, and I got into a bottle of what they call pitoro, which is, I don't know if you know what pitoro is, but it's for listeners that don't know, it's basically a lot of Puerto Rican households, they will take a handle of rum, the big guys. You clear out I would say a bit of it, and then you just shove whatever fruit and stuff you have around.
Oh, I've seen that.
Cap that up, and then they bury it, and they dig it up when special people come by, special occasions and stuff. And so everyone is different. Every single one of them's different. Always like a big pal, because it tastes great, but it'll knock you on your rear. And I just had a moment. I was like, look, man, things aren't good. Talking to the sky, like a lot of us do. And I was like, I've tried to fix everything. I've beat my head against so many doors, so many walls. It's not getting any better. I've had to fire all these people over the last year and a half. Things are looking pretty bleak. The work isn't coming in. So I guess I will try geography and just go where you put me. And so spun the globe, man. I put together a resume, which is this sheet of paper that lists out things that you've done. I didn't have one up until that point, so I had to do that, and that was a humbling experience. And in my promise, I made a promise, I guess, like I gave parameters, which you're not supposed to do when you're talking to this guy, but I did anyway. But it was like, look, I will, no questions asked, go anywhere in the world, so long as I don't have to take a step back in quality of life, which at that point wasn't like I wasn't like driving a Mercedes and living in a mansion or anything, so it was a pretty easy requirement. And I think at the same time, that's probably why I did it, because I was like, if I get any worse, I'm actually like poverty, dude. Like, I'm eating hot dogs and ramen right now. Like,
I feel you.
So I just can't go any lower than that, please. And so, I put my resume together, I kept my book as the Vigor website, and, just applied to ACD roles and creative director roles all around the world. Ho Chi Minh City, I put my resume into a place in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, because I'm like, this is my promise. If that's where you want me, that's where I'm going. And Atlanta won. Within 2.5 weeks, Atlanta came back. It was a good spot, a good job. I'm still friends with them. And 2 weeks after that, I was in a truck moving. After 30 years of being in one place.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. That is. So, what would you say? Outside of that, what would you say was the hardest struggle you had to overcome?
Oh, outside of that was it. That was the one.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
No, there's been a lot of other struggles, not without getting too dark. I had I have a wonderful mother. She's always been wonderful, but she had struggled with manic depression and bipolar. Still does, but hers got very bad, because back in that time, we had even less of an understanding or respect for mental illness and what that meant. And so at that time too, pharmaceutical companies were getting on board with, oh, hey, we can make a lot of money here. And so they basically just pumped her up full of psychotropic drugs. And it was a very dark, bad journey that I was a part of. I think that was probably the hardest struggle to deal with, but it also, again, it's easy when you hear this stuff when you're in a bad place, you just always shake it off because you think that person's life is great, but everything really does happen for a reason, and there's always, a light to the dark, even though you might not be able to see it when you're in the dark. So during those times, I would have said, like, what do you mean this is going to do good things for me in some way? I would have called you an idiot and some other choice words probably. But it did, it teaches you the value of a human. It teaches you that that someone, it's not given that someone's going to be there tomorrow. And so maybe don't say things you regret, no matter how mad you are. Get control of your own feelings. It teaches you to respect what that person brings to your life, and a lot of other good things. And it also taught me to, to work hard today, to not put things off to tomorrow, and to do the best you can. And so a lot of good things came from it.
That's amazing, man. It's just funny how depression kind of affects all of us in some way, shape, or form. Like you may say, okay, I've never been depressed, but I could tell you so many different people, like at least one person in their family has experienced that illness. That even though medication is available, it's just something that if without sheer willpower, it's just
it's an insane world, and I think more people are affected by a level of depression than they would ever admit or realize, and you can see the effects of it in a lot of different ways. And not to really take it down this path, because my God, what a Pandora's box. But I look at I look at a friend, like if I go back home, I'll catch a friend, meet up at the bar, and then realize that, well, he's been doing that every day, just like he was before I left. And start to peel back that onion, and I'm like, man, he's depressed. He doesn't know it. He thinks he's living a life. He thinks he's having a thing, and popping bottles, as they say. But I'm like, you're covering up so much. And the funny thing about that is, it's still there, man. It's not gonna go away, And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can knock it off and start really approaching what it is that's affecting you, Which probably wasn't that big to begin with, but now it's bigger. You feed the monster. It turns in from a little tiny monster into this big monster that just looms over you. And that's a scary place to be.
Yeah, the mind, man. It's a phenomenal thing.
Yeah, I mean, look at what it produces. Creatives, I think, are more susceptible to this, as you probably know. But it produces some amazing work. But the most amazing work is usually done by the most tormented people, and that's a scary thing,
Oh man, that is funny. But
it's true. Yeah, it's true. Sorry, man. Van Gogh cut off his ear over a lady. He cut it off. That guy was not right in the head. I mean, I think it's because he had too much of what was it? Mercury and lead in the colors, but
might be.
Yeah.
All right. So, where is Joseph grabbing support from? Who is your support system? Who is the people that kind of keep you together when you experience these tragic things, or just to keep you motivated?
Great question. My mom still coddles me, and I'm not afraid to say it. I'm still a mama's boy in a lot of ways, and my wife still challenges me, and I think
nice.
Without those things, I would be over coddled and I may be over challenged. But my wife's very caring too, but she also asks questions that make me think, make me mad sometimes, but in the right way, and I love her more for it every time.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
Those wives, man, they will keep you on your toes.
That's right. That's right. And that's a good thing. I think there's a very big difference between being kept on your toes and being put back on your heels. It's two very different things. And I think the sooner you realize that, the sooner you start to zero in on the kind of people you want in your life. I want people to keep me on my toes. But the people that put you back on your feet are toxic. And it can be easy to mix up the two.
That is the truth. So here, let's jump back to Vigor. Mm-hmm. At Vigor, what is the atmosphere that you are trying to create there?
So we have some tenets that all span from, or I should say, spawn from my original thinking of myself and the kind of creative I was and the kind of creative that I wanted to be, and things obviously change. It's not me anymore. In fact, I think I matter very little. in the day to day. What really matters from what comes from me is challenging, the people on my team to be even more brilliant than they realize they are. I know they're smart as hell. That's why they're there. Like, I hired people that I think are smarter and more talented and oftentimes better looking than me, just by just by design. But um, but like their work is so strong, and I see myself as the person that needs to continue to push them forward. Like the day that they stop growing and learning, I fully expect them to shake my hand, look me in the eyes, and say, "It's time for me to move on." And it'll be a day that like is the truest meaning of bittersweet, because I will be so happy for them, and I'll be so sad to lose them at the same time. But all that day always comes, And so my goal right now is to make sure that they are a far superior human and creative than they were the moment they started.
I love it. I love it. So here at the studio, you are basically focused on what? Outside of, your employees, when it comes to the business, to growing the studio, like, what are you focused on in regards to that?
A lot of biz dev, a lot of account management, because I have a lot of expertise in not just creative, but the nuances of the business of restaurants, and even more getting into where restaurants exist. So like inside of breweries, inside of hotels. Because I have that expertise and that experience, I consult a lot. Probably a lot more than a lot of other agencies do. I can say by experience I know that. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of consulting. There's a lot of deep discussions around like strategy, what needs to happen next for them, what's on the horizon. If they have ideas, does it make sense? Can I add something to add perspective or just bolster their idea, make it better? And then back to new business, it's more of continuing to build our expertise, continuing to extend the name, the brand out there, and what it really means to do it with vigor. Like that's I'm the flag waver, right? I'm the guy that's like on top of the mountain waving the flag and hoping other people climb up to us.
Nice. I like that mentality.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to do more consulting, like what advice would you give them to get into that?
I would say don't.
Oh my god.
So consultants have a I hate the word, but I would say in a way we are all consultants, because consultants are problem solvers. And I think one of the things that has happened over the last maybe 10 or 15 years is this monumental shift from what a graphic designer was, the person who does some graphics for you, quote unquote, to what design thinking really does for a brand. So what I would say to a person who is trying to get into it is, one, make sure you have a leg to stand on. Like, just because you can make a nice logo or design, a brochure, doesn't mean you're a consultant. Yeah, like so what you should be doing is, by all means continue to read print magazine and how design and, participate in the creative industry. But if you're going to be a consultant, find a niche and then own the niche. So don't find like 5 niches, just one, so for me it was restaurants. And I could have even gotten further and said, okay, we're going to do like a quick serve restaurants and fast casual. That's all we do. But restaurants was enough. Because it was broad enough. But, for instance, like the guys at Kodo Design, for those that don't know, they're up in Indianapolis, I believe. Great guys. They are really focused on craft brewery branding. That's what they do. They do craft breweries. And so because they focused on that, the other stuff they read is all about the brewery business, what it means to start one up, what it means to run one, the nuances of, and so they have this other set of learning. So when they're designing something, they can have deeper discussions around the life of that design and what it actually does. Because we're artists ish. You know, it's commercial art. It's gotta move the needle, man. You know, flat out. And I think a lot of designers today kind of forget that. Yeah, there could be other things at play, but you better be prepared to like change what you say and what you think and what you're kind of standing up for with your designs. Because I think there's a time to fight for things, and there's a time to listen and absorb. And I think most designers need to do the latter a lot more. You know, think, absorb. You know, it's not. Yeah, actually, a friend of mine, she says it best. Like, I was getting really heated about something. You know, I was like, oh man, I was so up in arms. Like, the client, I can't believe they would do this, right? I can't believe the client wants us to do this. There's no way. This is the dumbest move. And she looked at me and said, "Is this the sword you want to fall on?" And I'm like, "What? Well, what do you mean?" She's like, "Is this the sword you want to fall on? You want to go to fights for this? Because I'll do." She's like, "I'll do it." She was the account person. She's like, "I'll go fight for this. But just know that you can only fall on so many swords before you're dead. So be very sure that this is the one you want to fall on." You know, and I was like, I don't want to fall on the sword.
This is not the one.
This ain't the one, you know, and that's it, you know. And I think, you know, and I've seen it happen with a lot of creatives out there that I've had to work alongside or were on my team that I had to guide, where they get frustrated because it didn't go the way they had imagined.
Right.
And that doesn't make it wrong, and that doesn't make the client stupid. The fact is we are given challenges. We have to overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
That's our job. You know, it's not to make something look pretty. It's to make something work that should look pretty.
Right.
At least to the market looking at it. And I think that's one of the hardest things that I think that's the magic moment between a good designer and a great one.
Make something work that looks pretty.
That's right.
I love it. Make something work that looks pretty. Not because sometimes we get confused and think it's the former is first, which is
right.
Make it look pretty and hopefully it works.
Yeah, I think the architectural field has a more eloquent way of saying it. And form follows function, and that's exactly what it means. You know? Function first, form second. You know, you can if you create a functional piece that technically isn't on trend or the coolest thing that people want to talk about, but it moved the needle and it worked and it actually did the job plus, you're a better designer, in my opinion.
Love it. So what is that gear, that thing that Joseph can't live without? And
she's right here.
Oh, okay.
She's my teammate. Come here. I'll show you. Come here. Come on. This is our chief culture officer. Her name is Elsa, and she's a little wonderful like min pin who is like terrified of the computer all of a sudden.
Oh.
But no, she's awesome, man. Coming home to her, coming home to my wife. It's family. It's family. It's the heart that you come back to is the piece of gear. I know that might be kind of trite, but you know it's very clear in our employee handbook too, and something that I will say, like, if your wife is calling, if your boyfriend's calling, if your mom's calling, and we're in the middle of a meeting, so long as it's not like a middle of a pitch,
right,
take the call. It's more important. Take the call. You know, if it's not important, say, hey, I'll call you back. Come right back in. We're good. Like, I don't need to know what it was about. But if family calls, you answer the call. In my opinion, I think that's the most important thing, because that doesn't mean you don't hustle. It doesn't mean you don't work hard. It doesn't mean you don't grind. It just means you got your priorities straight, you know, and I want my team to work hard, and I think they'll work a lot harder knowing that if their family calls, they can talk to them without getting in trouble or a dirty look or anything like that. That's the piece of gear that I think a lot of people forget.
I love it, man. Dude, you're freaking amazing, man. Love it. So
Thank you.
what is Joseph excited about right now?
Oh, what am I excited about right now? There's a lot of things. You know, I think we've only begun to hit our stride with what Vigor means and what it can do for not just our clients, but the creative community. So for those that don't know, you know, we also run Grits and Grids. Actually, Natalie Suarez, she's on my team. Rockstar, she's actually been taking the reins on that and killing it.
Shout out to Natalie.
Yeah, shout out to Natalie. I'm actually a little bit jealous because like she'll write things. I'm like, man, that was smart. That was really smart. I wouldn't have said that.
Oh,
So she's been killing it, and I think what's great about the blog is that it gives, so I did it, and then as I have creatives on board, I encourage them to write critiques, not because I want them to be snooty designers, but what I think it does is it forces you to start to look at design with a more analytical eye, so you can then use that and you can absorb it, and you realize that, oh, like they did this because it actually communicates this, and then we can have better conversations. So we love Grits and Grids. The podcast is slower for us. It's gone to a monthly, mainly because of busyness.
right.
But we still love it. Still love talking to creatives like this. But I think the big one right now is we're trying to figure out how do we share our passion and our knowledge and our expertise with creatives, and whether it's designers, entrepreneurs, or I should say restaurateurs, and people who may be clients at some point of ours. How do we share with them to get them on the bull, because the bull's our logo, and get them charging forward and with that same that same strength, that same panache and passion. And there are a couple ideas of how that unfurls that I don't know if I want to say yet, but we'll see when it happens. But that's kind of where my focus is for the business and the brand.
Nice.
And then it's always like that new client, that new challenge. Because even though we're niched in restaurants, it's so much broader than I think a lot of people realize. So we're doing a lot of work in like the hotel space, Hotel restaurants are a completely different beast.
Dude, I don't think people
Yeah.
understand how vast the whole restaurant industry is.
It is the backbone of our economy, of our life, China, like I was watching Ugly Delicious, which is on Netflix by David Chang from Momofuku. And it's an 8 episode series so far. I thought it was brilliant, but the one episode was on I want to say fried rice, just all on fried rice. And I think what people forget, this wasn't the first time I'd heard it. I already knew this, but like the Chinese restaurant is universal, literally universal. They had Chinese food in spaceships, so. It is the backbone of most cities. The Chinese people are some of the most hardworking people in the world, and I think they are truly representative of American everything in so many ways, because they took their cuisine, they altered it, and they've made something different and new that I think is more American than apple pie, honestly. And I think that it's beautiful, and so I think. The expression that restaurants bring with their food and their experiences, it's why we love it, is because if you think about some of the most magical moments in your life, chances are they happened around food and or in a restaurant. First kiss, there was probably a date involved, unless nowadays it's just a Tinder swipe, but like back in the day you had to go on a date, like you had to do a date, like that was a thing.
Right.
But that happened there. When you graduated, your parents probably took you to a restaurant. When you did something amazing in middle school, you probably got taken to your favorite restaurant. That was the thing. Like it's a celebration moment, and it's so accessible these days. And I think food is it's the untapped creative from our world. So in every other industry, designers get to think about what you see, what you touch, sometimes what you smell, maybe, the space that you're in, which could be considered an additional sensory experience.
Right.
Motion, motion happening, things moving. How does this move? We get to do all this stuff, but we never get to dictate what you taste, and that is like amazing, and so when you can create a brand that like captures the essence of what that chef is creating from his soul, and you combine it with like this interior experience that isn't subway tile and reclaimed wood and Edison light bulbs, which is pretty much everything right now. So something that like matches, and then you get an identity and a tone of voice and this visual language that just is icing on the cake. That there is something so unbelievably I'm going to use a word that's going to get me made fun of at the office. Visceral. It is visceral. Like it is it is something that you can't put your finger on, but it's what makes it magic. And I think that's always what we're looking to do.
Love
That's
it.
what makes us happy.
I love it. All right, so as we're getting ready to close, what advice would you have for creatives? You're in charge of a studio. What advice would you have for someone that wants to start a studio?
Yeah, there's a lot of advice to be had. I'll maybe give you a couple. So you were at Creative South, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So there was a lot of knocking of the hustle, and I didn't like it. So there's a lot of people who's like, hey, don't hustle so hard. And I'm like, listening to this, I'm like, is it because you don't want competition? Is that why you're saying that? Because, like, you hustled and you're in front of everyone unfurling what you learned because you hustled, because that's what you did, because you grinded, you pushed. And now you're up there saying don't do it. What? Yeah. Yes, hustle. But hustle smart. You don't need to kill yourself to get ahead. Bite off a little bit more than you can chew, but not too much. You don't want to choke, quite honestly. Right. And find something that you're good at and push on it. And then don't be afraid to stop doing something that isn't working. We're told not to quit, right? Don't quit. Keep pushing. Don't keep pushing. Like, you'll know it. Like, if you're hammering your head against a wall and it ain't working, it's time to look up to the sky and say, "Yo, dude, put me somewhere where I'm supposed to be."
Right.
Because this ain't working. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then I think the last piece would be you will only become a better designer by actually collaborating. Like, you're not the best thing in the world. Even John Contino, who's freaking rad, with his New York accent. I hope he's listening to this because he'll laugh. He's awesome, but John Contino would only get better by having other people around him, and I think he would agree with that. The more you collaborate, the more you talk, the more you're not afraid to say you're wrong or consider a different perspective, the better you're going to be. And that's the essence of owning a studio. I think that so many people think, like, I'm really good, I've learned all I can learn, I can do this job, I'm going to go do it. Well, there's only one of you. And at some point, you're going to have another person. And the worst thing that you can do is have a person, put them in a corner and make them do something and then just never talk. But if you haven't built that skill to, like, collaborate and learn and learn to let go of your battles and learn to listen and absorb, like I said, that is how you succeed, no matter if it's starting a studio or growing within a larger agency. And quite honestly, relationships in general, man, like, just that's 101.
Facts.
Right?
That is the truth, man. That is so much the truth. It's funny you said that. I was interviewed on a podcast recently, and I remember saying that, like, good design is collaborative design, and I was just like, because that's when everything changed for me when it comes to designing. Just having these little inner circles where you could throw stuff out and be like, what you think, and just have everybody pick it apart. You know what I mean?
Right, in the best of ways. And, like, and it's funny because I still feel like our industry hasn't gotten good at it, and I don't know if it's because there's, like, this desperate need to own something for it to be mine. I did that. Right. But, like, going back to music, we should put a nice little bow on this. The best music in the world is the music when you get, like, 3 or 4 people together and you're just riffing on each other. Like the call and response. You got a bass player, it's like dun-ga-dun-dun-ga-dun-ga-dun, and you get, like, a guitar player, and then all of a sudden the drummer's like, but what if I switch? What if I switch? And then that's magical, And if you can take that approach, that we're not picking it apart, we're riffing, we're creating a musical piece that's even better because I want to add me into it. And that's why, like, you look at The Office and the people that I've gotten to agree to work there. They all have a different perspective, and that's by design. Like, I'm not looking, I don't look at, like, appearances as a hiring tactic, but what I want to understand is your point of view on things. You know, what I don't want is a bunch of bearded white dudes in a room trying to like design for not bearded white dudes. You know, I want people that like have had a different background, a different upbringing, a different thought, who like different music, who just think the opposite, you know, because and if you can add a good attitude and a collaboration on top of that, that's America, right? Like, or at least what it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
You know, like just a lot of beautiful people having great ideas that work together.
I love it, man. I love it. Especially coming from the North. That's a big deal in the North. Like, just different cultures mixing together.
Right. It's true.
Well, dude, this was awesome, man. I really enjoyed this. Like, there's so much going on with you that's very intriguing to me, and I appreciate everything that you got going on, man.
Absolutely. You got to stop by the studio, man. Take a break from the job and come hang out for a lunch or something. We'd love to have you.
It's done. I will.
Awesome.
I'll make it happen, man. I'll definitely make it happen. But for now, I'm gonna let you go. Hopefully, we'll survive through this storm that's going on right now.
True, right?
So, if people want to learn more about Vigor and Joseph, where can they go to find you?
You know, I think you'll find our ongoing narrative, for better or worse, on Instagram at Vigor Branding. And then also check us out at Grits and Grids. It's a huge resource of inspiration. We do it for free. We don't make any money on that. It's purely out of the love of it, man. So if you go there and you like stuff, please just comment and say, hey guys, I really liked that you post this. Because, you know, sometimes you just don't realize that people are looking, you know, and it just feels good when someone reacts. And I think those are the main places. Like, you can go to our website. The Grits and Grids website you'll love a lot more than Vigor, but swing by Vigor, let me know what you think. And you can always reach out to us. We're very open door, and you know, you get to come first, but anyone else that wants to swing by the office, we'd love to have them and do a high five and, you know, maybe have a taco.
Nice. Love it. Well, Joseph, thank you for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks again for listening to this week's episode. I hope it brought you a ton of value. I'm always open for feedback and just to hear what you thought and what stood out to you the most. So reach out to me through my Instagram or Twitter, DPCREATES, and just let me know, like, how did this episode impact you and what did you get from it? What stood out the most? I would love to hear what it is that brought you value. So go to dpcreates.com to get the new shirt. I'm really going to be pushing for the new shirt. It's a pre-order, and it's going to be gone June 17th. So it's a limited edition. So the first shirt for the podcast did good. So we want to do this again. So dpcreates.com. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode. Be blessed.